In this video, we are going to talk about 4 useful animations in After Effects. So stick around until the end of the video. Hi, I'm Mustafa Esampur and I'm going to teach you 4 interesting animations that are going to be really useful for your motion graphic projects. The first animation we will learn is the line animation. In motion graphic, when we want to put emphasis on something or show the process of transformation, we use the line animation. So the line animation is really important for showing the process. I select the pen tool and set its fill to none. Press OK. Then select any color you like for the stroke. I select the same color as my logo and set the size to 5. Then we need to draw the line. All you need to do to draw this is to click here and create a curve in a way you like. The shape of this curve is up to you. So I open my shape layer and from add menu apply a trim path modifier to it. In this trim path modifier you can see a few parameters. We need this end parameter. I move 2 seconds and keyframe this end parameter. I want it to be 100 here. Then go back to second 0 and here it should be 0%. And this way you can see the line animation starts to form. Just like that. But what I want to do is to move 10 frames forward and add a keyframe to start parameter as well. Keep it on 0. What we want to do is to move 10 frames from the end parameter and here set the start value to 100 as well. As you can see, the line animation is much more interesting this way. To make this entire animation faster, you can select all the keyframes, hold down the Alt button and drag the last keyframes to the left. This way the keyframes get closer and the animation speed is increased. The line goes here faster, which is much better. I think we can increase the stroke size to make it fit the logo better. This will make it look more in sync with the rest of the scene. I think 15 will be good for it. Now to make it even more interesting, you can go in the shape layer and in the stroke tab find this line cap parameter. I set this on round cap option, which will make the stroke ends rounded. I think it looks better this way. To make more of these lines, you can select the shape layer and duplicate it via pressing Ctrl D. After it got copied, I need to adjust it since we need a new line. So I open it and delete the shape from the content tab. To do this, I press backspace button. Also, I want to keep this trim path so that we can apply it to the new line. I keep this layer selected and start drawing using the pen tool. I want to draw the new line like this. Here, keeping the same layer selected, I go here, let me select it again. I draw a new line here. If you keep the same selection, it will draw from the end of the same line. You can actually draw many shapes in the same shape layer. This will make working on it more convenient. Now as you can see, we have created the lines here. Now we just need to go to the line cap and make these rounded as well. It will make it more interesting. Also you can select all the keyframes and press F9 to apply easing to them. It will make the animation much smoother. This way the animation looks fantastic. The smaller lines I added are now just as fast as the bigger line we drew first. They should be a bit faster so that their animation will end faster. So I select their keyframes like this and by holding down Alt button, pull them closer. I want them to be half the duration of the larger line. It will make the animation much more interesting. Now that the animation is created, you can take this layer and put it whenever you want in the scene. For example, I think the lines should appear here. So I take them and adjust their position in the timeline so that they look visually more appealing. You can do this the way you like and based on your project. The second useful After Effects animation I want to teach you is this circle animation. You can use these to make your project look more interesting. Let's get to it then. I go here and draw a circle using the ellipse tool. Same as before, I don't want the fill and I just want the stroke. You can hold down the shift button and draw the circle. The size is good like this. Let's go and animate it. I open the ellipse layer and in the stroke tab I add keyframes to the stroke width parameter. Then a few frames later, 10 or 20 frames for example, here I set the stroke to 0. This way the circle loses the stroke and it looks like it is exploding. This looks like an explosion shockwave, but that is not all of the animation. We need another step to complete this. Go down here and in the Transform tab, enable the Scale parameter and add a keyframe to it. I select the layer and press U to see the active keyframes. I take this Scale keyframe and put it on the same frame as the stroke width. Then I go to the start of the layer and set the scale to 0. As you can see, now the circle appears. Then it explodes and disappears. Once again, to make the animation happen faster, I select these keyframes and drag them to the left by holding down Alt button. That way the animation will be faster. It is looking good now, but I think we can make it better. You can make it even faster to get a better result. I set them on the frame 20. This way the entire animation takes 20 frames to finish. And finally, select all the keyframes and press F9 to apply easing to them. Now the explosion is finished. Also, we can select the circle and duplicate it to have more explosions in the scene. In order to do this, I go back to the final keyframes. Select the layer, hold down the Alt button and press closed bracket key on the keyboard to close the layer. I do this to know how long my animation will take to finish. I duplicate it by pressing Ctrl and D. I move it here and change the timing a little. Just like this, you can create multiple copies and use them in different places. As you can see, the final project looks really good. Before you would need to go and search for a template like this to use, now you can create them easily yourself and use them in your projects however you like. Let's move on to the third useful animation of the video. This one is really interesting. With a few lines I can create a round motion, and using that we can add some cool detail to our project. Here I want to draw a line. I want to use the pen tool to draw a line at the center of my composition. If you don't know where the center of your comp is, you can click on this button here and enable Title Action Save option. Now some guidelines will appear to help you find it. You can go here to the center and start drawing a straight line. I hold down Shift button to draw a straight line. Just like that. This color is good. It doesn't matter now. Let me disable this for now. I only need this line. It's not as long as I want, so I take the end and pull it up. Now I open the layer and add a modifier to it. This time I want to add the repeater modifier. The repeater modifier helps us duplicate the shape by infinite times. Here in the repeater settings, I set it to 15 copies. Just like that. I open the repeater transform and set its X position to 0. Now all you need to do is to increase the rotation value. I increase it and as you can see, it creates a star shape for us. Pay attention here. Some of these parameters have two values, X and Y. I go here and increase the Y for the anchor point parameter. It creates a circle for us. You can place the anchor point at the center of this shape in two different ways. Press Ctrl, Alt, Home buttons together. Or you can select the layer and go to the layer drop down, then select Transform and do the same thing from this menu. Click on Center Anchor Point in Layer Content. It will put the anchor point right in the middle. I enable the logo layer again and take this shape layer higher and place it around the logo. As you can see, we should increase the anchor point value a little more. I increase it a little. This much is enough, I think. Take it and put it around the circle. I think it is okay now. Now I go and add keyframes to rotation and transform of my original layer. I add a keyframe and then in 1 second and 10 frames, I rotate it a little bit. Like that. Make sure you set the anchor point on the center before doing this. Just like I did. I move forward a little from second 0. Here again, add a trim path modifier to it. In the trim path settings, I add a keyframe to end parameter. move in the timeline. In the second one, for example, I change this from 100 to 0. I also add keyframes to start and change it to 100 after a few frames. Make sure your first end keyframe is 100, so you should do the opposite for this. It is 100 here, then it becomes 0. But we want it to be 0, then go to 100. So I select the keyframes, right click on them, and click on Keyframe Assistant. Here, I select Time Reverse Keyframes. This will reverse our keyframes. The animation is nearly finished. I just need to increase the length of the lines a little bit. You can do that from Path tab. Select it and increase the length with these handles, just like that. So with that, we have created this cool effect very easily. The only thing left is to make sure you ease the animation so that the final motions are smooth and pleasant. Let's move on to the fourth and final animation. This is a really cool animation. Here we want to animate the radial lines. The end result of this animation looks really complicated and time consuming, when in reality the process is really simple. It will make the project look much more interesting though. I create a circle with the ellipse tool. I want it to be in the center of the scene. I also increase the stroke size. Now I add trim path modifier to it, and I change its parameters. This time I want to start my animation from the start parameter. I go here and set keyframe to start, then set it to 100. A few frames later, I set it to 0. Now, a few frames after our first keyframe, I also add a keyframe to end parameter, then set it to 0 a few frames after the second keyframe. Also make sure you set the stroke line cap on round cap to get a better looking result. Okay, that's it for this part of the animation. This part is done. Make sure to ease the keyframes. I think it can be a little faster. I also take these end keyframes closer to start keyframes to get a shorter line. Make sure the anchor point of the layer is in the middle. Then duplicate the layer. Now change the rotation, just like that. Now we have two layers that do the same rotation. I create another duplicate and increase its scale like this. It will make a cool effect. Then decrease the stroke size for this one. You can also go here and select all the layers, press U to show the keyframes. I take these keyframes of the new layer and take them closer to increase the speed. Look here, since it has a thinner line, I want to have a faster animation for it. Something like this. You can create as many copies as you like. Then change their scale. Adjust the speed and rotation. And also what direction you want it to move in. This way, simply by copying the same shape, you can have multiple lines. All you need to do is to change a few parameters for each copy, but the result you get will look really cool and interesting. Now that we have learned all these cool and helpful animations, you can go on and combine all of them together, just like the composition I have here. As you can see, we didn't do anything complex. Yet by combining some techniques, we managed to create an interesting project that doesn't look empty. Using 4 simple tricks, we can make a better animation. Make sure to use these animations in your next motion graphic project. Also make sure to leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this tutorial. And subscribe to the channel. We're going to have more videos about After Effects and motion graphics in the future. I will see you in the next video.